Whether it's in the jungle, in the streets of Los Angeles, or back in the jungle, but this time on an alien planet, you can find the Predator in some pretty interesting places. Long story short, if there's a formidable hunter, the Predator is there ready to go invisible, then skin and hang some bodies. But he meets some pretty damn formidable foes along the way. Wait, I get the other ones, but Adrian Brody? Okay then, guess the pianist is ready to kick some ass because today we're diving into the franchise, which is all the rage these days. So we're here to tell you what the f*** you need to know about the Predator franchise.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
The Predator series has always been one that's towed the line between action and horror. It's given us larger-than-life characters and some truly incredible action set pieces. Not to mention the number of playground arguments that could be had just based on the question of, do you think the Predator could kill Godzilla? And questions like it. Predator actually started out as a script called Hunter from Jim and John Thomas. They wanted to explore the idea of what it is to be hunted by following a group of aliens as they hunt down different species. This was eventually changed to just one alien hunting down what is considered to be the most dangerous species, human beings. I guess they didn't know about the xenomorph yet. But Hollywood wasn't really interested in their little screenplay as the two writers were unknown. They even had to resort to slipping the script under doors, which would eventually land them a meeting with Joel Silver. Silver saw potential in the script and wanted to not only up the budget, but make it much more action-packed. These horror and sci-fi roots with action accents really helped shape the series into what it would eventually become. But what exactly are these creatures?
You're one ugly motherfucker.
The Predators are actually known as the Yautja, and they're an extraterrestrial species whose sole purpose is to trophy hunt other species for sport. Their grotesque face may resemble a part of the human anatomy that we can't talk about here, but that doesn't make it any less terrifying. They utilize advanced technology such as camouflage and plasma cannons in order to hunt their prey. But they also have simpler items such as a double blade, a razor boomerang, and even a netting that retracts completely. They are the ultimate hunters. Hell, they're such badasses that they even breed xenomorphs because they view them as such worthy targets. In fact, they even have a pyramid on Earth which houses some Xenos that the Predators send their young to in some sort of coming-of-age ritual. So yeah, these guys are hardcore. And the Predator character has been played by many different stunt performers over the years. Even Jean-Claude Van Damme had originally found himself in the suit. But he simply wasn't intimidating enough when put up against giants like Schwarzenegger and Ventura. So Peter Michael Hall stepped into the role, and would even return for the sequel. Even a bunch of Los Angeles Lakers were brought aboard for the big finale at the end. Guess when you need tall guys, you go to basketball players. With Hall's death, Ian White took on the role for AVP and would return for its sequel Requiem. In Predators, as the title dictates, there needed to be multiple performers, so Brian Steele, Carrie Jones, and Derek Mears took on the parts. Brian Prince stepped into the suit for the Predator, while the Chad Predator was all CGI. Finally, in Prey, Dane DeLegro took on the part and is absolutely phenomenal in the role, feeling like a complete natural. All of these performers bring a little different something to the role, but the standouts would be Peter Michael Hall and Dane DeLegro. Absolutely terrifying.
You are one ugly motherfucker.
Every Predator film follows the concept of elite alien hunters who want to put their skills to the test against the best of the best. Think Most Dangerous Game, but with big hulking aliens. They're on the hunt for trophies and status because they're a straight-up warrior society. So let's take you through the movies. And yes, we're going to include the Alien vs. Predator movies here, because they just feel a little closer in tone to Predator than anything Alien. Plus, Alien has a lot of movies, no reason to add more to it when we eventually do that one.
Dylan!
You son of a bitch!
First up was 1987's Predator, where we follow Dutch and his military rescue squad tasked with rescuing a politician from a group of insurgents. But on the way, they come across a helicopter wreckage and 3 skinned bodies. What precedes is the vicious hunter taking out all these buff military guys in exceedingly violent ways. On the surface, this is the group of badasses you'd want with you in this situation, yet they don't stand a chance. After the Predator kills off all of his men, Dutch uses his smarts to lay a trap for the hunter. But not before he gets one last laugh. The memorable characters in this one were Dutch, Dylan, and Billy. And sure, you could probably add Jesse Ventura's Blaine to the list, but hell, I will always just refer to him as Jesse Ventura.
Okay, pussy face. It's your move. Shit happens.
Predator 2 came in 1990 and took the Predator out of the jungles of Central America to the concrete jungle of Los Angeles. But this isn't just any LA. This is an LA where things have gone to shit. Gangs are out of control, and Lieutenant Mike Harrigan has been trying to take down the drug cartels. A Predator starts taking out the gang members, as well as some cops, leading to a showdown between the Pred and Harrigan. We even get the ultimate little meetup on the ship, and a hint at things to come. The sole people worth remembering from this one were Mike Harrigan, Jerry Lambert, and Gary Busey's Peter Keyes. The Predator series took a bit of a break, but eventually we were given the versus film we'd been waiting for decades.
What did you say this room was called?
Sacrificial chamber.
2004's Alien vs. Predator saw the Predator and the Xenomorph clashing for the first time. A group of humans ascend on Antarctica to explore an ancient pyramid that was just discovered. Unfortunately, the reason that it's discovered is because the Predators are doing some kind of coming-of-age ritual with their young ones, where they hunt xenomorphs. So the humans quickly become entangled in a battle between the two species. There's some odd decisions here, like making the Predator essentially a good guy. And holy hell, when did these Predators become linebackers? They're huge! We even get a nice little ending tease for the next film. The only really memorable characters from this one are Alexa Woods and Charles Bishop Wayland.
I saw it. It was real.
See? No monster.
2007 brought the follow-up Aliens vs. Predator Requiem, which seems to be set up to succeed with that cool ending of the first, but unfortunately does none of that. Every scene is just a human showing up and getting killed by either an alien or a predator. It repeats this throughout the entire movie until there's pretty much no one left. This is easily the worst in the entire series, and it hardly even deserves a place here. The aliens take over a small town and the Predators come in to wipe them out. We also get this insane Predator-Xenomorph hybrid that sounds cool but hardly manages anything other than to lumber around. It's an infuriating movie if you're a fan of either franchise, and I can't say loud enough to stay far, far away from it. Even the final battle is a disappointment. Literally, one of the only things to enjoy about this movie is the random cameo from Rickety Cricket. He's the only person even worth mentioning, and he's in it for all of 30 seconds.
Rise up, gonna get higher and higher, woo!
The ones that are running things up there, the larger ones hunt the smaller ones. It's some kind of blood feud, I guess, been going on for a long time.
Thankfully, things got back on track with 2010's Predators, which saw some of the most elite killers on Earth kidnapped and dropped off on an alien world. This is apparently something that the Predators do sporadically as they come across someone that was taken during a prior hunt. Ooh, Lawrence Fishburne. Adrian Brody's Royce is our main badass, and he seems to be on top of every situation, even keeping an eye out for bad guy Topher Grace. Eventually he manages to kill one of the Predators, but they're still stuck in this alien world. Royce, Ronald, and Edwin all stand out in this one, and it's a shame we never got a sequel.
How'd you snag a ticket on this shitmobile?
Put a bullet in the CO. He was an asshole.
Despite the last film seemingly setting up an awesome sequel, The Predator came to us in 2018 and decided to do its own thing. Following warring clans, one predator has escaped with important materials and is being hunted down by another one. They wind up on Earth and duke it out, while these humans just consistently make matters worse. And I'm not even going to get into the annoying autistic kid or Olivia Munn. They also decide to introduce this ridiculous Guyver-like armor called the Predator Killer that looks just as silly as it sounds. The only people from this movie that were even worth mentioning were Thomas Jane and Keegan-Michael Key, but I couldn't tell you their names to save my life, so were they really even that memorable?
Why do you want to hunt? Because you all think that I can't.
Then 2022 finally saw the return of the elite alien hunter with Prey. Set 300 years ago and following the Comanche Nation, a young woman fights to protect her tribe against a deadly hunter. There are beautiful visuals and the predator has never looked better, slimming down and slaughtering everyone in its path. Oh, Preddy is an absolute force of nature here, and features some of the coolest stuff you'll ever see in a Predator movie. The memorable characters here are Naru and Tabe, though I really can't say enough good things about Naru. This woman is Dutch levels of badass, and she did so with a lot less muscle to help out. There's an obvious woman empowerment angle here, but it's natural and it works. Here's hoping we see more of Naru in the future.
Okay, who's next?
So, which of these movies are exactly worth your time? Well, as far as essential viewing, I would say Predator, Predators, and Prey. And then, if you have the time, and I know this is controversial, Predator 2 and Alien vs. Predator. And then for the skip it portion, definitely Aliens vs. Predator Requiem and The Predator. And if you're still in the Predator mood after all of that, there's plenty of other mediums to explore as well, with plenty of comic books and novels which tell the further exploits of these creatures. There have even been several games based on the series, some of which we've covered on our Playing with Fear show. But there are others too, like Predator Concrete Jungle and Predator Hunting Grounds, both of which are fun for different reasons. So if you're into the character, there's a lot of options. The future of the Predator series has never been brighter. With Prey finding absolutely massive success through its Hulu release, people are already clamoring for more from Dan Trachtenberg. Rumors of Prey 2 have already been in full effect. So whether we get a continuation of Naru's story or placed in an entirely different time period, one thing we know for certain: someone's getting hunted.
If it bleeds, we can kill it. On today's episode of Playing with Fear. Welcome to JoBlo Horror Originals Playing with Fear, where we take a look at some of the landmark horror titles throughout the history of gaming. We've looked at Alien games, we've looked at Alien vs. Predator games, but how about just the Predator? He has more character and nuance than the Alien, but games about just him are outnumbered nearly 10-1 by the Xenomorph, and generally he just gets lumped in with the Versus series of games. There's a handful of them out there, but today we're going to go back and investigate where it all began. I want to thank you guys for watching Playing with Fear, and ask that if you enjoy our shows, please subscribe to our channel right now. Like this video and click on the bell so you can be notified each time a new video goes up. And now, back to the show. Action and sci-fi have been around for a while, but the 80s is the decade where they really put the two together. It started with the Terminator, ramped up with Aliens, and hit a trifecta with Predator. Predator began life as a script called Hunter in 1983, and was a mere idea that Jim Thomas had for a script. He asked his brother John to help develop it out into a fleshed out script, and eventually it was shopped around and picked up by Joel Silver. With his experience on Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger, he knew he had a major star and experience to make it. He then tabbed John McTiernan to direct and filled out the rest of the cast with Carl Weathers, Bill Duke, Jesse Ventura, and R.G. Armstrong, amongst others. The film was shot for $15 to $18 million and pulled in nearly 100 at the box office, with mixed reviews at the time. I'd say you're hard-pressed now to find viewers that don't enjoy it, and it's become a classic that has gone far past that first film. Dutch Schaefer and his crew are brought in by CIA operative Dillon to travel to the jungles of Central America and rescue a cabinet minister and his aide from the rebel guerrilla fighters. When they get there and take out the soldiers, Dutch finds Soviet intelligence officers and realizes he and his team were used. They leave with a captured guerrilla Anna and get picked off one at a time until only Dutch is left to take on the Predator one-on-one. That's a significant reduction of the story, but come on. I'd wager everyone here has seen The Predator, and if you haven't, go now and come back. Even apart from the cast I mentioned, nearly everyone would have relatively substantial careers. The music was done by Alan Silvestri and is an amazing score. Hawkins is played by future Christmas-loving writer and director Shane Black, who would give us classics like Lethal Weapon and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and even come full circle with getting to do the somewhat maligned sequel The Predator from 2018. Even Stan Winston and team would get an Oscar nomination for their special effects work, particularly with the creature design for the man behind the suit, Kevin Peter Hall. Predator would, not surprisingly, become a franchise. Predator 2 would come out in 1990 and be different, but just as fun, and with some of us here actually growing up with that one first. Predators would have to wait 20 years to come out, and adds a fun little spin to the formula with the hunters bringing game to their own playground rather than sending solo hunters to go after them. The previously mentioned Shane Black made The Predator, and it's flawed, particularly in its portrayal of autism, but I had a good time with it. Somehow there have only been 4 movies in the main franchise, but the character has also appeared in the 2 AVP movies and has enjoyed quite the success in comics, both in solo arcs of his own, and also facing off against the Dark Knight, Superman, the Justice League, and even Judge Dredd. Toys, novels, collectible cards, and of course video games would follow. The first game to come out would be When the Fire Was Hot in 1987. It would be released on the NES, Famicom, MSX, ZX Spectrum, Commodore 64, Atari ST, Acorn Electron, love sneaking that little guy into a conversation where I can, the Amiga, BBC Micro, and Amstrad CPC. There are a few different publishers and developers between these systems, as was the way of the Wild West of programming for home computers at the time, but the main ones were Activision Publishing and Pac-In Video developing. Activision has been around forever, and their list of titles is ludicrously long, but they've done some heavy hitters over the years and are still putting out notable AAA titles today. Pac-In Video was a much smaller studio that made games from 1985 to 1996, with a lot of weird licensed games for home systems being their bread and butter. And I mean weird too. Check out their Die Hard game for TurboGrafx 16. You know, the one where John McClane goes through a swamp in the jungle to get to Nakatomi Plaza? All of the following games were released in 1987 or 88 and follow one of 2 styles while receiving middling reviews before being mostly forgotten at the time. As I just mentioned, while the game was released on 9 different systems, it really only had 2 releases. The MSX and NES follow the same story, while all of the other microcomputer editions of the title would follow their own. On the micro side, there isn't much story here. We get the full truncated version of the film, with Dutch and his team getting dropped off, killing the bad guys, and then having Dutch battle it out with the Predator before bailing out of the jungle and hopping into a helicopter back to civilization. The other version has a text and picture cutscene that tells you about the first part of the movie, and then skips ahead to Dutch tracking the Predator and getting out alive. That's pretty much it. There aren't any cutscenes at all for the micro editions, and only a few extra ones at the end of the NES game. The MSX and NES game have none of that first half action movie that makes the film so memorable in the first place. This isn't surprising though, as games of this kind back then were more focused on gameplay than story, for better and for worse. We'll start with the micro editions first, as they're not exactly complex. You take control of Dutch and go from left to right on a single scrolling screen. Since it doesn't skip past the beginning part of the movie, Dutch must take out the guerrilla forces on his way to take out the Predator and escape with his life. You get a gun to use, limited hand grenades, and can also use your fists. Using your fists is actually an important part while facing the Predator in some games, as it's the honorable thing to do. A wild and interesting design choice for 1987. You have a life bar that can be depleted, which will cause you to die, and the only enemy encounters you will find in these games will be the soldiers and the Predator. Each game varies a little bit due to console limitations. This will affect speed, choppiness, how many enemies are on screen at a time, and even little things like watching the team come out of the chopper before Dutch and then disappear. Other differences will include the overall look of the game. Even though the gameplay and even levels are all the same, the color scheme will be different between, say, the Commodore 64 edition to the ZX Spectrum with its green overlay. Sound will also vary from game to game, including wonderfully done to, well, non-existent, depending on the version. Other aesthetic changes are in some versions. Even when the Predator is not on screen, you will see his tracking cannon come for you, and on some other versions the screen will even change to one of his scope visions from the film. All in all, this version, on whatever system you want to check it out on, is a fun time waster and another example of how fun and weird the microcomputer landscape was, particularly in the world of licensed games. The NES version, and to some extent the MSX port, are much more in-depth, complicated, and a difficult affair. The NES game is wrongfully called bad when it's just difficult and a little obtuse. A good example of this is in the very first level. There's a machine gun just to the player's left when they jump off a rock, but there's nothing to tell you this, The gun icon is obstructed, and everything we've been told about games of this ilk is that you go from left to right, so I can't imagine anyone instinctively going left first. This version opens with a cutscene explaining that Dutch's team has been killed and he's alone to stop the Predator. From that opening, you take over as Dutch, or at least the sprite in the pink jammies that the game tells you is Dutch, and you go through the first of the zoomed out side-scrolling levels. There are 30 levels total, but if you take the proper pathing, you'll only see about 20 of them. The weapons include your fists, a machine gun, a laser rifle, and grenades. The grenades can also be used to destroy blocks or other barriers. Fists are useless, and the grenades can kill you just as easily, but the guns work well. The only unfortunate part here is that at the end of each level, you're stripped of all weapons, and on top of that, you can accidentally downgrade if you pick up the wrong weapon icon during the level. The enemies you run into are soldiers, scorpions, slime guys, ghosts, plants, birds, and angry rocks. You also fight the Predator occasionally, including a giant predator head as the final boss. You remember that scene from the movie, right? The jungle and the cave zoomed out levels aren't the only thing on offer, however. There's also the Ethereal Zone, also lovingly called Big Mode. Big Mode zooms into the sprite, and it admittedly looks a lot more like Arnold than the other one did, and it becomes a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up of sorts in the gameplay department. Orbs of different colors will come at the player, and the goal is to shoot them with various bullets. These types of levels alternate with the jungle and cave levels, with the goal to fight and platform your way to the end of each stage. Predator fights primarily happen in the big mode stages, but there are Ninja Turtle looking ones near the end of the game, with the final boss, the previously mentioned floating predator head, taking place in a standard stage. First you knock the mask off, and then you destroy the exposed face. The final cutscene has one of the most famous lines from the film. You all remember it, when Dutch sees the Predator and says, "You're one ugly beast." Classic. The MSX version is a similar game, but the stages don't scroll with Dutch and are single screens similar to many of the games of the MSX due to console limitations. There are no big mode sections, and there are fewer levels in general without any cutscenes. It does look and run a whole lot better, even with its shorter length and lack of modes. Also, the beginning screen looks like Dutch and the Predator are about to join Street Fighter 2. It is still difficult due to poor design choices, but it's much more straightforward than the NES counterpart. If you really like the NES game, then I'd say track this one down too. I'm skipping the scares section this go round because it's a simple, hard no. The games are not scary in any way. These games are mostly forgotten at time, and I honestly had only heard of the NES version before researching for the video. There's no current legitimate way to play these games. They're all abandonware now and easy to find on the internet if you want to give them a go. Predator would go on to have a game for the second movie. This one too would have multiple versions for multiple consoles. While there would be plenty of mobile games down the road, the next big release would be Predator Concrete Jungle for the original Xbox and PS2. It would be a much more in-depth 3D game where you play as the Predator and was inspired by the comic of the same name. All through the 90s and 2000s, he would appear in the various Alien vs. Predator titles, and in the side-scrolling beat-em-ups, he was usually positioned as a good guy. That would change for any first-person shooters, as that was every man or alien for himself. His next big appearances would be joining the Murderer's Row of Mortal Kombat X guest characters, in the multiplayer maps of the 2013 edition of Call of Duty, and in his own multiplayer game, Predator Hunting Grounds. 2021 would even see the character thrown into one of the biggest video game stages ever by appearing in Fortnite. Who knows what we'll see next? Alien vs. Predator games seem to show up every few years, and there's a new film coming in the summer of 2022, so that gives us more opportunity to release complementary media. Which of these Predator games have you played? What do you want to see next from the galaxy's most revered hunter? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you on the next episode of Playing with Fear.
Dylan! You son of a bitch.